All right, welcome to the Erie Music History Podcast. I am Chip Shell, your host, and today my guest is Dave VanAmburg. Welcome, Dave.
What an honor and a pleasure it is to be here. Thank you. Hey, before you get going,
go ahead.
I want to say thank you on behalf of all of the musicians and music lovers in Erie and in the surrounding area. You have put your heart and soul into this.
That's fun.
And it takes a ton of effort, a whole lot of resources, and I'm sure that your family has been most patient with you. But thank you for what you do.
Thank you. No, it's been a labor of love for sure. And I said it a few minutes ago. I'm excited to talk to you because I've interviewed a lot of guys over the years and ladies. No one has ever sent me a 1,700-word document. About
Is that what it was?
1,732 word document. And obviously that came from, you're working on a memoir or something, right?
I'm working on a number of things.
Okay.
One of which is how to give people on a global level an understanding of the various things that have brought me to where I am.
Got it.
So, yes.
All right. Yeah, because I read the little snippet in the Erie Reader a little while ago that they did about you, and it had some of this stuff in it. But what's interesting about you is, like I said, you took a 40-year break.
Yeah.
From playing music. So we should start out by saying you're a St. Andrews guy. You went to, St. Andrews when you were little, 1st through 4th grade. You took some piano lessons, and then you stopped. Age 4th grade, whatever.
Whatever 4th grade was.
Marion Sellers was your teacher. Love it. You quit playing for 8 years. And then you pick up guitar. And how do you say Mike's last name? Mike Morick?
Mike Morick is an amazing person, very, very creative. We were in high school together, and he was part of a folk trio.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on their name, but in high school. And at age 17, when I woke up and said, I really like guitar, acoustic guitar. I really like folk music.
Yeah.
I like acoustic. I like all these things. Why am I not playing music? And the conclusion I came to was, well, all of my friends have been playing for a decade, and they're all phenomenal musicians.
Yeah.
And I'm too old. So at age 17. At 17, I thought about it, and I thought, I can do this. Okay. So Mike kindly showed me a few chords, and we ended up playing together in a band.
Okay.
And he went on to do some really nice things.
Is he still in Erie? Or?
No. He hasn't been for many, many decades.
Okay, all right. I didn't recognize that name.
He moved to Denver first and then up to the Pacific Northwest. He played nationally quite a bit.
Okay.
Moved to Nashville. Worked with the Mandrell sisters and their whole family organization.
Wow.
Had his own company where he was, when FM radio was a thing, he was doing radio promotion for adult contemporary and a few other categories of music.
Interesting.
He produced a number of great musicians out of Nashville.
Huh.
And then he stopped playing music because of joint problems from his service in Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
And he went into photography, National Geographic quality, phenomenal.
Wow, so a creative
from around
guy.
The world. Oh, absolutely. He's in southern Tennessee now, as one of his brothers told me lately, and he said he's playing music again.
Wow,
so maybe
cool.
I'll get to hear some of Mike's music.
So you guys graduate from prep in 65?
Yes.
And so that puts you, how old?
Oh, I'm 76 now.
76. So, I said at the beginning, I'm excited because you took a 40-year break. That's unusual, right? But also, you play now twice a week. Prior to that, in COVID, you were playing 4 to 5 times a week.
Yes.
Since you came back with a vengeance. So we're going to get into all that. Okay. How do you take a 40-year break? During that time, you served on a lot of boards, and you were city planner, you were a consultant, you had your own company for many, many years. That kept you busy, and you had family, I'm sure.
Big family, yes.
Okay. How many kids?
5 kids, 8 grandkids.
Wow. All right. And any of them musicians?
1, 2, 3.
Okay. All right.
Yes. 4. I'm sorry.
4. All right. We won't say who you left out. That's all right. But what was interesting is, you come back and you start playing, you said you've already forgotten some of the bands that you're playing with now, but we can talk about like Bootlegger Bible Club with, Matt, Matty and B and the Dirty Pickles, House of Rhythm, the V Band, Two Blue. There are others, I know, but I wanted to throw those names out so people know, like, Yeah, this is a guy that's playing a lot at age 76.
Yep.
You know, fantastic, still playing a lot. So that's really cool. But how do we get there? How do you get there? That's what I mean. You kind of glossed over it, but at age 17, you're taking these finger picking lessons from Mike. But then you go on to be self-taught in electric, acoustic guitar, keyboard, flute, alto sax. I mean, I found an article from you playing at someone's wedding in 1974, and it was, I can tell you who those people were.
Maybe with Pam Verity. I did a wedding with Pam. I did a couple weddings back in.
Yeah, it was odd, and like it said, like there were flute solos and sax solos and guitar, you know, and so yeah, I mean, it seems like you went on to learn a lot, and then you know through the document you sent me, you traveled a lot. So what happens?
So I just fell in love with the the guitar, the acoustic guitar, and I absorbed as much as I could. Unfortunately, in those days there was no hint of an internet, so it took an awful lot to learn one new song, to discover one new song
with a record, back and forth.
Yeah, if you could find the records.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm looking for for things from the Deep South, from Mississippi John Hurd, or some of the great blues players, and they're difficult to find. So anyway, I met a lot of people. There was a wonderful man. His name was Bob Thaller, and he was an older student, an adult student at Gannon when I was there.
Okay.
And I had figured out some of the chords and so on, but I didn't know anything about finger picking. And I happened to run into him, and I had known his grandmother. She lived behind my house when I was growing up. And he took a liking to me for some reason, took me over to his apartment, and showed me the first finger-picking song I ever learned, which was San Francisco Bay Blues by Jesse Fuller. And I'll thank him to the day I die.
Was this guy playing actively, or he just knew how to play?
No, he knew how to play. He had played before he was married.
Okay.
I'm not sure his wife was happy that he spent a couple hours with me.
Yeah.
Thank you to her belatedly for her patience. Anyway, I was very interested in not only the music but community, and there was a lot of strange things going on in this town, because whereas we had 4 or 5 colleges, none of the administrations of the colleges wanted to talk to each other. They saw each other as the enemy. And so I did a number of things, one of which was we put together monthly parties for all the freshman students of all the campuses. And
where were these at?
Well, where the Erie Community Foundation is now used to be the Gannon Student Union.
6th Street.
Yeah, 6th and Walnut.
Right. Big acorn in front.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Got it.
And then we put together a nonprofit, a 501c3, and we created a coffee house.
In 1914 time.
No, this was before then.
Oh, this
was the Insecure.
The Insecure. I love the name of this place.
It was a great place. I do have just a few photos from there.
And it was in that giant building?
No. Oh, we started off while we were getting the access to the building that we wanted. We started off in the basement of St. Paul's Episcopal Church.
Oh, okay.
And we were there every week, 1 or 2 nights a week. And then after a couple of months, we had things together. We were in two of the beautiful Victorian buildings that were torn down as a part of redevelopment.
Sure. Yeah.
The Redevelopment Authority had basically taken over all of complete blocks, but they had not torn down the buildings. So we rented 2 adjacent storefronts on 7th Street, just east of State, where the parking lot is for what was the Erie Sports Store now.
Sure, right.
Okay?
Yep.
And we had free reign, and there was a foundation that owned the property, and we said, are we allowed to put holes in the wall, to go between the two storefronts? And they said, you can do whatever you want.
So what year is this? How old are you?
65. I was 17.
Okay, and so you're saying let's create a space where young kids can, freshman college or younger?
It was open. There was no alcohol there.
Right.
We were open 7 days and 7 nights. And it became, a place in between classes when students, no matter who they were,
hang out,
go have a cup of coffee and study. And we brought in speakers from Buffalo and Chicago and New York. We brought in musicians from the New York coffee house circuit.
Yeah.
There was you might remember Jack Todd.
I know the name.
Okay.
Sure, he's a keyboard player, a piano player, right?
Jack Todd, blind. Jack Todd came into town in '64.
Okay.
And he came in with a band, 4 guys out of Connecticut, and they were a phenomenal jazz band. And they came to the Pope Hotel. They became the house band. They ended up, some of them moved on, but Jack stayed in town along with his musical partner, who went by 2 names, either Nick Stevens or Stephen Nicholas.
Okay.
And I was at the Pope Hotel, and I met them, and I said, would you guys come and play? And they went, oh, yeah, we'll have a good time.
Wait, so you're a 17-year-old boy at the Pope Hotel. So if people don't know, that was a predominantly black hotel, right?
Yeah.
And they were playing rhythm and blues, or jazz?
They were playing everything. They were playing the best jazz I had heard live at that point in my life.
Yeah, because I always think of Jack Todd as playing all those genres,
right.
And he played for years.
Yep.
Yeah.
I ended up playing with Jack a little bit, but I couldn't keep up with him.
Yeah, right.
I mean, he was unreal. And the thing about Jack as a musician, you thought of him as a keyboard player. You put him in front of a B3, put him in front of a piano. It didn't matter what the keyboard was. And one day we're playing and just not playing out, but just practicing or working on some things.
Yeah.
And he said, hand me that guitar. And I went, okay. He played better than almost anybody.
Wow.
And he played alto sax, he played tenor sax, he played blues harp, didn't matter what it was. The man was just a musical genius.
Kind of an influence then for you, because you go on to play all those. I mean, maybe not direct influence, but yeah.
Oh, he was very much an influence. I guess I never really even thought about how much of an influence he
that's
was.
interesting.
But he was such a good guy.
Huh. All right. And so what was the name of the foundation that was running these event nights?
Oh, it was called the nonprofit. Oh,
yeah,
that was the Insecure. The Insecure Coffee House was
Insecure.
INN space SECURE.
Love it. Okay.
There was a Catholic priest who had been my debate coach because we traveled all over the country during high school, and he flipped over to teach college when I ended up going to college. And great man. His name was Joe Petula, and he was as interested in creating that kind of a space as I was.
Yeah.
And he helped immensely. We had people from every major religion on the board. We had people from big corporations and small business owners on the board.
That's wild.
We had people from all over the community.
That's interesting to me, because I know a little bit more about your history, and you go on, like I said, to become a fixture within the community on different boards and staying involved and everything. And it seems like you started early doing that, getting involved. Yeah. A lot of people would not do that.
I was influenced by my mother.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
She had 4 kids, and she was juggling so much stuff, but she was the president of the Pennsylvania Parent Teachers Association. She was the president of the Pennsylvania Red Cross. She was...
So get involved. Yeah. And do something.
Yeah. Figure out what you came here to do.
Yeah.
And do it.
Yeah, right.
That was really, my parents gave me so much flexibility, so much trust.
That's great.
As a kid. I mean, I was allowed to travel, so I mean, I'm 13 years old and I'm traveling.
It's crazy.
And, they trusted me.
Yeah.
I don't think, I blew it a couple of times, but not too much. But, yes, my mother, both my parents were very good at that, in what they displayed to me, not so much in the conversation, but just in the actions.
Right.
Figure out who you are, why you came to this planet.
Yeah.
Do it and be good.
And do it well. Right.
Yes,
yeah.
Do it well, but be good to other people, and that's it.
Well, that whole good to other people, so that whole coffee house circuit was kind of about that, right? It was giving people a voice, a place to go,
Absolutely.
So the Insecure is the basement of St. Paul's. You also listed the Gypsy Rover.
There was a gentleman by the name of Kenny King who had a coffee house upstairs from where room 33 is.
Oh, right now. Okay.
Yeah. And to get to it, you went up the fire stairs on the 11th Street side up to the second floor.
Which would not be allowed today, I'm sure.
I don't think so, but so he had that for, I think, 2 years.
Okay.
And that was prior to, when I was in high school.
Yeah, because I mentioned these coffee houses because that's a big part of forming who you are as a musician in those early days.
Very much. So many of my friends, went for the top 40.
Yeah.
Rock and roll. And some of them started off with rockabilly and 50s rock and then moved into rock and roll. And some of them just jumped into the 60s thing, with the early to mid 60s.
Yeah.
I started off with folk. I started off with blues.
Yeah.
But the blues that I started with was the acoustic stuff, the many different, the Piedmont style, all those different styles.
Old school. Yeah, right.
And then I got into Chicago blues, and I spent some time in Chicago.
Okay.
And, got to meet some people, play some places, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
talk to me about that travel part, because you said that you did travel even young.
So many of my friends, we're middle class. You never think about, are you wealthy, are you poor?
Right.
You got enough money to have a Christmas present? Good, you're good.
Yeah.
But my parents always took us camping. So they didn't have the money to, take us to the restaurants or the hotels or whatever.
Yeah.
But I went as far as Chicago to the west and all the way up and down the East Coast. And there was a period of time
with family vacations and
family
stuff.
vacations.
Yeah.
But,
that's cool.
It'd be 2 weeks in the middle of the summer, man. And we just went, they took us so many places. There was a period of time, 50s, I think it was, when, it would have been the late 50s, when the National Mall, downtown Washington, D.C., was under construction. They opened up half of that mall for tent camping.
Oh, wow.
So for 2 weeks, we were sitting in the middle of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, where
it was hot.
I bet.
It was muggy.
Yeah.
But we just got to, go into every nook and cranny of the federal buildings and, and the National Archives and you name it.
But that traveling had to expose you to, obviously, a lot more music, too, and different genres and things like that, too.
I was very fortunate. Then in high school, like I said, I was on the debate team.
Right.
And Joe Patullo was my coach. And there are so many lawyers in Erie who were on that, that went through that process. Were on that debate team. My brother was 2 years ahead of me. He and Tom Ridge were partners, and Mike Wisnowski was my partner for a couple of years. I mean, we got to travel literally every 3 weeks. We went to all these national invitational tournaments, Georgetown University.
For debate.
Yeah. And that opened up stuff. So I remember walking at noon on a weekday up Broadway around 44th Street. We were looking for a place to have lunch, and right on a corner is a club, and the doors are wide open, and Buddy Rich is playing there. And I'm going, who's that? And Joe Patullo says, oh, that's Buddy Rich, man. It's stopping. We spent the hour just watching Buddy Rich.
Yeah.
And then I spent a lot of time in the Village, as a teenager.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember just going and having my guitar.
That's when the Village was the Village.
It sure was.
Right.
And
pull that up a little bit.
Pull this up?
Yeah, right towards you. Nope. No,
Okay.
just forward. There you go.
There we go.
There
All right.
it is. Okay,
Cool.
good. So you're in the Village and...
Yeah, I mean, I just kept walking into places. Lena Horne's playing one place. I spent 4 hours just watching her. I'm sitting as close as I am to you.
Right.
And she's at her piano, and I'm going, wow, this is amazing. Or Dave Van Ronk, do you know who he was?
I don't, no.
Well, you got to look him up sometime.
Yes, you're a jazz guy, so a lot of this is
all
over my head.
Okay,
so
Dave Van Ronk was folk.
Okay, all right, even that.
He was like the mayor of the Village.
Okay.
And, just amazing.
Yeah.
But the opportunities were wonderful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you bring some of that back, obviously, from your travels. Hey, I want to play this, I want to play that.
Absolutely. That's where I identified so many of the songs that I wanted to learn how to play and to share. So then I ended up playing on the coffee house circuit some. You know, I mean, I was in the middle of school and work and all that other stuff.
As a solo artist?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I played some universities, and I played, there's a big school of folk. Chicago School of Folk, I believe is what it's called. Phenomenal auditorium. I mean, the seats that are up high, all the way around.
Right.
I got to play there. I got Kalamazoo, Michigan, just all over the place.
How did you book these gigs?
I didn't book them. I just went.
Okay. And then
there was very little booking at that time. I mean, like if you wanted to play at a coffee house in New York City, All right, so it's mostly the village. There were two kinds of places. There was the jazz club, which would be booking a Miles Davis or a Herbie Hancock or whoever. Okay, there was a number of restaurants, that were more upscale, but most of it was a pass the hat kind of a place.
Oh, okay.
And you got yourself almost like an open mic.
Yeah,
but there was only a couple of slots open on any given night.
So you do that from school to school, or hey, I'm going to go in Kalamazoo. I heard they have a place to play, or what?
I was in Kalamazoo because of relatives.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say a girl. That's usually part of the stories too. Yeah.
Sometimes it is. But I was there, and and I heard about this wonderful restaurant that was just, they had live music, and there wasn't that much at that point because the 60s was over. This was 71, 72, that kind of thing. Right. And I went, and I just fell in love with this place. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And there was a woman playing, and she had a 6-string and a 12-string. And on her break, I said, this is not kosher, but would you allow me to back you up a little bit?
Yeah.
And I ended up spending the whole night playing with her.
Cool.
Those kinds of things just always open up doors for you.
Sure.
If you're professional. Yeah, if you're professional about it.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. And yes, if you don't feel too uncomfortable just to walk in and say, hey, can I play for you and your staff for half an hour? Yeah, no charge, whatever, and see what you like.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of musicians these days could even fathom doing that. It's a different world, I understand.
There's a friend of mine who lives in Youngsville outside of Warren. His name is Bart Green. He's on the road right now, but he plays. And he's famous for that. I love Bart because he's been a salesman most of his life, he's an artist as well as a musician, but he has no barriers.
Yeah,
He'll just walk into any place and say, can I play for you?
Yeah. I always think about the Epics and when they went to the Peppermint Lounge, and it was one of those situations too. Like, hey, we think we could play here too. It's
right.
That we're willing to try this. We're willing to, audition for you. And
they did phenomenal things, and they were such good entertainers.
Right. Which is
they opened. Did you ever hear about the club they opened on State Street?
Which one? What was it? Who, the Epics, like Paul Yocklin?
Yeah.
And Vinny?
Paul and Vinny.
Yeah.
I had my first business, I had an antique store right on the corner of 6th and State, across from the Richford Arms.
Yep.
And there was a place around the corner on State Street between 6th and 5th that was called Jack Paris's Steakhouse.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it's where, what's there now?
Well, that's part of the food court.
Yeah, but so it was part of Sherlock's before?
Yes, Sherlock's.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Tippy, bought the property, but Jack had a real interesting approach because he didn't want to run his business, and 3 or 4 times he sold it with a balloon payment after 3 years or so.
Yeah.
And
so Paul and Vinny bought it at one point, and
they were there.
What'd they call it?
It was called Lonely Hearts Club.
The Lonely Hearts Club.
Yeah.
Interesting. I did not know that. Yeah. I've had Paul Jr. on, but we talked mostly about his dad and things like that.
Paul Jr. wasn't around then.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't even know. I have no idea what he's aware of with regard to that. But yeah, the boys used to stop in and chat with me all the time.
That's cool. Yeah. And, I love hearing about the old venues, and like these coffee houses. You had listed the Erie Arts Center with John Vanko. They had a coffee house?
John Vanko came to Erie to the Art Museum right out of college. He went to Allegheny, and I think it was 1964 that he came there, and he did a Friday night coffee house.
Did he already have a beard?
Yes.
I've never seen him without one. Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I have either.
Yeah, right. All right.
But John and I go back to those first days when he got here.
That's cool.
And he's always done so many good things for our community.
Yeah.
He just does them. Period.
So that leads me to the next coffee house, which I mentioned. Mm-hmm. Would you call the 1914 Thai a coffee house?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Because what's interesting is, and I'll show you this afterwards, I actually just came across at an auction an original poster from the 1914 Thai promoting Lincoln playing there in 1970.
Yep.
And I guarantee I was the only one in the whole auction who was losing his mind.
Because you wanted it.
Because I knew what it was, and I now have it framed and everything.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But
they threw me on the board for that one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
How
does a place like that have a board?
Well, you're a 501c3. You're a nonprofit.
It's a nonprofit.
Okay, so let's talk about that very briefly, because a lot of people I don't think really understand that. You can create a business, and you can make it a proprietorship or a partnership or a corporation. Okay, and there's multiple kinds of corporations. So most of the time you see LLC, meaning limited liability corporation. Right. Those didn't exist back then. And you can have a corporation that's a for-profit or a nonprofit. And you can incorporate either way, and almost all corporations get incorporated at the state level.
Okay.
Right. There's a few that are national. The American Red Cross or the Boy Scouts, those are incorporated through Congress.
Okay.
All right. But anyway, if you're going to do a nonprofit, you can do that in a couple of weeks. I mean, you file your paper and you're done.
Yeah.
But that doesn't get you a tax exempt status. So if you want to not pay taxes, sales tax and that kind of stuff.
Right.
If you want to be able to accept donations that your contributors can write off on their tax return, you have to have a tax exempt status, and you have to go to the IRS for that.
Got it.
And there are 22 or 23 different categories of nonprofits. 501c2, C3, C5, et cetera.
Okay.
And most nonprofits that we are aware of on the street, whether it's a social service agency like a JCAC, or whether it's a foundation like the Erie Community Foundation, or et cetera, those are all 501c something.
Sure, right.
And most of the social service are 501c3s.
All right.
Okay, and that's the one you'll most often hear about, as opposed to a trade union, and I forget what theirs is.
Okay. All right, so this has been Business Talk with Dave VanAmburg. Thank you
for
the new podcast. That's perfect. But that's good, because the 1914 tie, first of all, let me say, that's it's on Peach Street at 1914 Peach Street.
Right.
The building's not there anymore. It's across the street, if you can imagine, and down just a little bit from the Rook.
Yes.
The Emergent Care Center is there now. It's a parking lot. But that's where it was. Opens in 1970 at 8:14 p.m. 1914. Open Sundays, Tuesdays, Saturdays and Sundays you have music, I think. But it was under the sponsorship of the Christian Association of Metropolitan Erie, came Reverend Gordon Irvine. So he forms all that.
Yep. Gordon Irvine was a great man.
And how do you come to be on the board?
I knew him because he had been involved with the Insecure. I knew him because so many of the people that were on the board, like my good friend Chuck Schmidt, Father Chuck Schmidt, another Catholic priest who had been very influential to me as I was growing up. In fact, that's a good story. Chuck Schmidt and I spent weeks in Hyde-Asbury during the summer of '67.
Was he a priest already?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He had been a priest.
Yeah. So you're in the summer of love.
Yeah.
And
we were out. We rented a room and we were out there.
Why?
Well, I was traveling. It was the only. I started working when I was 13, and this was the only time that I took a break.
Oh,
so
okay.
I took like a month and a half off, and I hitchhiked up through Montreal to see my girlfriend at the time. There you go.
All right.
And we went to Expo 67s, like a World's Fair.
Absolutely. Right.
And went down to Boston and saw friends in New York City.
So you traveled around for months.
Yeah. So I was hitchhiking, and then I got back home one night because the next morning I was supposed to meet Chuck Schmidt down at intersection 79 and 80, and we headed off across the country for a couple of weeks.
Please tell me you saw like the airplane or the Dead or somebody at
the
time.
We went up. Yes.
Or there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What you remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, I remember an awful lot of it.
Yeah.
It was just a phenomenal visit. We were down in Los Angeles. We saw the Doors. We went to the Fillmore, the original Fillmore.
Yeah, the original Fillmore, right.
We saw Moby Grape. Wow. We saw just multiple bands.
Right, playing all the time. Yeah.
It was a wonderful experience.
Sure it was. Holy
Anyway,
cow.
I'm sorry I took you off on that tangent.
That's all right. Yeah.
But there were some very, very good people. As I recall it was Chuck Schmidt who first called me and said, "Will you get involved?" And I said,
"Yeah."
Yeah, if I can help. I mean, I played there a little bit. I didn't, we were trying to get, younger kids to be able to play, and that's where I first met Lee Taylor and the boys from Lincoln that you mentioned.
Right. And Lee would play there. I saw also solo sometimes, and so it wasn't just full bands that would play there.
No, there were all kinds of people coming and going.
Why was
I remember Jack Todd being there.
Oh, okay.
One night, and Nick Stevens, I think, was still in town. I'm not sure about that.
What was the building? Was it a 2-story building? I don't even know because it's not there anymore.
Another one of those beautiful Victorian buildings, red brick.
Okay,
and this was the first floor of it.
First floor. Okay.
And I cannot tell you what businesses had been in there.
Yeah,
prior.
Sure, right. Why was it called the Tie? TIE?
Because it was a railroad tie. You had 19th Street tracks right there.
Oh my God. Yeah, I've always wondered about that. All right. So, yeah, I mean, that wasn't around real long either. A couple years. Yeah. 70. Like I said, it opened in 70. I think I saw some articles about them looking for a new location for it, like in 72. I don't know why. And then it just
I believe
kind of fell off.
it had to do with the availability of the real estate.
Sure. Right. Yeah, they may have tore it down by then. Yeah.
I truly don't remember.
No, that's all right. Yeah. So the other thing is, you talked about all the different colleges, Mercier, Barron, Gannon, but they have their own college or like coffee houses?
Most of the colleges around the country during that period of time were involved in coffee houses one way or another. Right. So Gannon had coffee houses in 2 locations, as I recall. One was that little building that's now it's still part of their campus, but it was like in between the blocks between 6th and 7th Street.
Yeah.
Okay. They were on the first floor there.
Okay.
Prior to that, it was in the building, I think it's called Zern Hall, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
On 7th Street, on the opposite side, on the south side of 7th Street.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called.
In that block, and they were on the first floor.
Okay.
And they had a big space there next
right.
to the Black Student Union.
Okay.
There you go.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. So a lot of the musicians that, you should ask the guys that are in, my generation, if they played, because so many of the bands actually played there as well as solo artists.
I mean, obviously you play with Phil Popotnick now, and when Phil and his brother, Tim were in here, they talked to me about those times and everything. And obviously you play with Dave Blates, and who else have I had on that, is in that whole Scatella, was in that whole same era and playing those places. And, you have mentioned Gannon's Coffee House, but it also reminded me of, first of all, we haven't even got to any bands that you're in. And that's kind of the lead in here. So 69 to 70, you're in backcountry jam, right. Folks and blues with Mike Morick,
Mike Morick,
Jerry Mack, and Dave Horvath.
Yes.
What was backcountry jam? Folk and blues. I mean, what was the composition? Who was playing what?
Let's see. I was playing rhythm and lead guitar. Mike was playing rhythm guitar. Mike was doing the majority of the vocals. David was doing some harmonies and playing at the beginning a guitar, and then he switched to a keyboard, and Jerry was playing bass.
All right.
Jerry went on to move to Boston. I think he may still be there.
Okay.
I have not seen him in a long time, but he became a phenomenal musician. He was busking and doing extremely well in the MTA.
Wow. Up in Boston.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Michael, I told you about David. Yep. David, last I knew, was the head of a library on a big university campus in the South somewhere, maybe Georgia.
Where did backcountry jam play? The coffee houses that we're talking about?
Played all the coffee houses. Yeah. I'd have to think about where all we played. We did in a couple of clubs and concerts. I know right after we broke up, Pat Rogers, Sr., did you know Pat Rogers?
No.
What a great man he was. He had a bar at 12th and Powell called The Poet and the Peasant.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I know the name of it. Yeah, it's
so
where
Michael and David became the house band there.
Oh, okay. All right.
They were there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I'm blanking on where else we would.
No, that's all right. I usually do that type of research, but I forgot to after I received the 1,700-word document. I thought, I don't have to do anything. So
I'm just trying to make it easy.
No, it's been great. It's great. So I'm getting roundabout to that whole Gannon reference because in 71, 73, you play in Calico, which I've heard of because I know who Dave Greenberger is because he's very prominent on, New York City guy. And
David Greenberger is one of the most amazing people on the planet.
Yeah, and played in one of the best named bands ever, Lou Tullio.
L-O-O.
I mean, I love the picture. So you get with these guys for a couple years, and then my goal, tell me who they are.
Okay, so my goal in that band was to truly begin to understand how you play with a band.
Okay.
I wanted to write music. I wanted to compose. We ended up writing 4 hours of all original music. We had 6 guys in the band, 5 of whom were there for the whole time, and the drummer flipped toward the end. He had to leave. Mark Dodge was a savant. I mean, he plays drums, he plays bass, he plays guitar, he sings, he plays keyboard, and he lives in the Seattle area. He played with Kitty Hawk, which was the top band in the entire Pacific Northwest for many years.
Wow.
Once I was out there on business, and I got to sit in with this band. And, I mean, they had a following. I mean, it was thousands of people.
A lot of these guys that you've played with are multi-instrumentalists, and they went on to continue music.
Yes,
and
very much.
You didn't major in music or anything in college.
I didn't take. I went to Gannon and didn't even have a music appreciation class.
Okay, all right.
No, I was not good enough. Yeah, remember, I started at 17 there.
I know, but the people even you're associated with today are top-notch musicians in this town.
I love them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very, very fortunate to be able to play with all the good people. So anyway, Mark,
and then we got Dave Greenberger.
Now, David Greenberger plays bass, and he's played in multiple bands.
Yeah.
David is, like I said, one of the most amazing people.
So we got
Giles Ponticello.
All right.
Went to.
We don't need to tell who their backgrounds on each guy.
He plays in Chicago, in Columbus, Ohio, all the time.
Okay.
I brought him into town a couple of times. He's an amazing musician.
Giles Ponticello.
Yeah,
got it. Okay, Drew DeCrease. I've heard of Drew.
Yeah, Drew lived in England for a while.
I haven't heard of them.
For work. I believe last I heard from him, he was in the Pittsburgh area, and he was actually playing again.
How about Bill Weber? Is he related to the other
Tom
Webers?
Weber's brother?
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Bill played drums and percussion with us, and then he left to leave town, and Kevin Olson joined us.
Oh, okay.
For a while.
All right, so...
Okay, that's 6.
I know Bill. I've heard of Bill through Tom because I had Tom on, and I forgot he had a brother who was a drummer. So you write 4 hours of original music. You're playing... Like you have, I'm just reading from your script now.
Mostly colleges, Allegheny, in the region, that kind of stuff.
But the key here is like one of the things you're talking about playing Traffic. You're talking about playing Little Feat. You play Beatles and Bluegrass, but you're also playing fusion, America's Songbook. Like I know Traffic and Little Feat are not easy things to play, but back then, I mean, that was music of the day, right? And so you had to learn to play that. It was more than 3 chords. I mean,
we spent a year and a half, 2 years practicing every week.
Yeah. Where did you practice?
Mark Dodge's mother's basement.
Mark Dodge's mother. Thank you.
Yes,
right.
She was a sweetheart. She made sure that we had all the opportunities in the world.
And so Calico stays together for a while, and then this is a long way getting around back to Gannon.
Okay,
you rent out the Schuster Theater. For 2 nights, sold out.
Yep.
I mean, that's crazy to think about that.
Well, we couldn't play in any of the bars in town because all they wanted was note-for-note covers of top 40 rock and roll.
Ah, okay.
And we didn't do note-for-note covers. We didn't do top 40. We didn't do, we did rock and roll, but not with this other stuff.
We'll create our own venue. We'll have our own venue.
Yeah, and so I had been hoping that we could get enough traction based here that I could leave my main job and my second job and support a family playing music.
Yeah, because you're married at this time, right? 73 or whatever we're in.
I'm married. I had a little kid.
Yeah. And you were working at the Record Den at the time, or
the Record Bar?
Record Bar,
in Liberty Plaza.
Yeah,
and that was around that time. Yes,
and Lee Taylor was working there.
Yeah, and Lee and I and Bill Sheely, who was Lee's drummer.
Yeah, right.
A number of other guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of guys. have connections to the Record Den, the Record Bar,
Yeah.
Raspberry Records. People talk about that was a destination, places you would go and hang out, just much like you'd go to Markham's and see Keith or, hang out and, those
Absolutely.
types of things.
And the main Record Bar was managed by Pete Mailer.
Okay.
And Pete was personal friends with big, doggone it, jazz, big band jazz guy. And
you got me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Stan Kenton, there we go.
Oh, okay. I know who that is. Sure.
Stan and his entire band would stay at Peter's house whenever they were within a 100-mile radius.
Wow.
And the manager for the Liberty Plaza was actually my brother-in-law, Steve Yuskevich.
Oh.
And that's how I met Phil Popotnick, because for a while, Steve was booking Phil's band, Philip.
To play in the parking lot?
Separate from
okay.
From the Liberty Plaza or the Record Bar.
'Cause I've seen those pictures of like Lincoln playing in the parking lot.
Steve he's just a genius.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an amazing man.
Some of the things I did find about you, May 1973, Barron Arts Festival. You're playing bluegrass with Giles, Keith Vasheko, Paul Gall, Bob Arlett, Seelinger and Long, Dave Ruff, Drew DeCrease, and Paul Morosky. All those names are added as people that played there. I imagine you weren't all playing together.
No, but there were a lot of overlaps. I totally forgot about it.
I figured,
that. Yes, thank you for that.
Barron Arts Festival. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
There had been one.
Did Gannon have their own and other ones? Or?
I don't remember Gannon having one. The Erie Arts Festival was big. And they started off downtown in Perry Square.
Right.
And we got to play for the first couple of those. Calico played.
So they played in Perry Square before Villa?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
So, I mean, some of those names, like Paul Gall is going to be on my show here coming up.
Plays
with Donnie Iris. We had to cancel it the other day because he had a gig and I had a gig. And Bob Arlett, obviously, longtime singer, great singer. Connections. Again, 73, you play with Mike Dombrowski, another guy that I'm trying to get a hold of, great guitar player.
He'll be in town in a couple of weeks. He's going to play with us.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure that he gets a hold of you.
Yeah, I met him at the Paul Yocklin benefit the one year. So you're playing with, in 73, Mike, Mark Dodge, Lou DeBacco, and you compose and record a soundtrack for a PBS documentary.
Yeah.
What is going on? I mean, how do you get that gig? And what was the documentary? Did it run?
Dave Harbula, I think it was, from Edinburgh. No. I'm sorry, we'll go back so far. There were people who were a part of Edinburgh University that were involved in creating a documentary. And Dave called me one day and he said, I need a soundtrack. Can you help me?
You don't remember what it was about, the documentary?
It was, no.
All right. That's all right.
It was about...
What do you mean you don't remember 1973?
I'm sorry. This was not a long process. This was a weekend.
Oh.
This was, okay, who's available?
Put something
Mark
together.
had not left town yet.
Okay.
Calico was gone.
Yeah.
Mike and I had... always enjoyed each other, had never played together.
Yeah.
Like Louis. Louis was, joined at the hip with Mike.
And Mike played in Rubyport? Or
he played in Wave.
He played in
that
Wave.
That was his primary,
his
primary band. He tried to do the same thing I tried to do. They were playing the Holiday Inn touring circuit.
Sure.
And he was trying to get the revenue up so that he could support his family with it.
Got it.
And one day after couple of years on the road, maybe 3. I saw him and I said, how are we? And he said, got to hang it up.
Oh, wow.
He went back to school, became an electrical engineer, and spent his career with GE.
Really?
I still, to this day, have never heard him hit a wrong note.
All right.
He's like David Blates, although David claims to me he's actually had a few.
David Blates, maybe one of my he is one of my favorite bass players who has refused to be on the podcast because he says he doesn't have a lot of interesting stories to tell. I'm like, come on.
But David is one of the most humble people
absolutely
you'll ever meet.
One of the greatest guys. Earlier, I mentioned you playing a wedding. I found my notes.
Okay.
June 1974, you're at the wedding of Sandra Peruzzi and Nord Kofini.
Oh, yeah.
Know them?
Very well.
Still married?
Still married.
All right.
They live on the coast in North Carolina, Wilmington.
You played with someone named Ira Crow.
Okay.
Mandolin, flute, and guitar solos provided by Dave VanAmburg and Ira Crow.
Cool.
All right.
Glad to know it. Thank you.
Sandy and Nord probably remember. So,
I hope so.
Julia Hamilton, J.D. Feathers. He played some acoustic duos with them.
With her, it was maybe 6 months, something like that. We played there was a Norb's Bar on 18th Street, just east of State.
Wait,
second floor.
Norb's.
No, not that Norm.
Oh, not that.
This
Norm.
is a different Norm.
Oh, okay.
Big guy.
Okay.
Norm was his name. I'm
right.
sorry, Norm.
All right.
I can't remember his last name. We played there a bit. Played a couple other places.
Not Norm Francis from Earthworks.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Norm Francis.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just talked to him a few months ago. Yeah. All right.
He was a good boy.
Yeah. Another kind of odd place that stuck around for a little while, Earthworks.
Yeah.
Where a lot of musicians played. Very short period of time, like the 1914 tie. You know, those places come and go, but they had a big influence on people, especially of your age, that were playing in those days.
Yep.
So we've reached that point where you decide, I'm done. I'm going to hang it up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be a professional and,
I had done a lot of things already in job-wise, and it just wasn't going to work. I could not get any farther with the music.
Sure. So was it literally that? Like I set my guitar aside and all my stuff?
Everything went in the closet.
It did.
For those 40 years, there were a few people who kept encouraging me to come back, and there were a few people who always tried to make a space for me.
Marty O'Connor,
Phil Popotnick, and David Blates played for 15 years at the Bel Air. If I walked in on a Friday night and they were playing, the odds are they would invite me to play.
Odds are I probably heard you play there because I saw them plenty of times.
Yes,
I would just go and watch
stuff.
Dave and go, I don't understand how he's playing that bass.
Yes. When Joey Scatella would come back into town from Nashville, he always made it a point.
Awesome.
It didn't matter how many times I said no, he would be dragging me out and saying, I don't care if you can't play, you're playing.
Yeah.
There were a couple people who were very kind to me.
During that break, you also took a year of lessons from Basil.
Yeah.
From Basil Ronzetti.
Absolutely.
So, that's, obviously people talk about Basil as, he was an incredible teacher and everything like that.
I took 6 months of piano. I didn't even have a keyboard. I had no piano. The only thing I could do was go in there and listen and learn.
Well, did you, I think of you as a guitar player. I obviously know you played all those different instruments.
Right.
Did you go to him to say, I want to learn piano?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
So.
And then after 6 months, I said, I gained a lot. I learned an awful lot. We talked a lot about, various aspects of theory and so on.
Yeah, right.
And I said, how do you feel about teaching me on guitar? He said, okay, we can do that. So even though he wasn't a guitar player, he opened up a lot of very interesting things for me with because all I had was the acoustic guitar. I've only owned four guitars in my life.
Oh, wow. That's
I still have three
too.
of them.
And that's even more unusual, yeah. Was Basil a strict guy?
I think with his family he was strict.
Yeah.
He had very high expectations, but he was a gentle soul.
Okay, yeah.
He was not a mean man to his students.
Got it.
But, you came here to learn. Let's learn.
Right.
Now, every person who teaches music has a totally different approach.
Right.
And everybody does the best they can. And everybody comes from wherever they've started in what they've learned. Basil was classical and he was jazz. Okay. And those were his two primary groundings. Okay. So when he would teach, he would be dealing with a combination of those two schools of music, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
And those two schools of music are not what a teenage kid is going to want to focus on at first, but that's going to form the foundation of what they're going to become. Especially in the 70s or 60s or whatever, they want to say, show me how to play the Beatles, or give me a 3-chord song.
Right. Basil really didn't enjoy doing that kind of thing.
Got it. All right. So you periodically sit in with folks, the Lincoln guys, Paul Eisert's been on, we mentioned
Paul's
Lee Taylor.
Great man,
Yep, great guys. Joe Doris, we're talking about some of the best jazz drummers, and Joe's a great singer too, You take the lessons, and then first of all, before we get to you coming back into playing music.
You're almost at an hour here.
I know.
Sorry.
Tell me, because I don't know a lot about jazz.
Okay.
Tell me about Jazz Erie, how it came to be. 94, you were the founding president, and then where it went.
Okay, Jazz Erie, there were about 70 musicians and music lovers who had been getting together on a monthly basis for 3 years trying to put together a Jazz Appreciation Society.
Okay.
I knew nothing about it.
Oh.
And John Vanko was one of the leaders of that.
Tony Stefanelli, probably?
No, there were two other gentlemen who are no longer on the planet. Maybe their names will come to me.
Got it.
But they weren't from Erie. One was a jazz drummer, and we'll see if that comes. Anyway, Phil Popotnik called me up out of the blue, and he says, hey, there's a meeting of a bunch of musicians tonight. You want to go? And I said, okay. And he says, all right, but keep your mouth shut. I said, oh, okay. And so I sat there for an hour and listened to all the things all these people wanted to do. And I'm just taking notes. And finally...
And you've been a businessman now for decades.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I've been a consultant to all kinds of big time
exactly.
people.
Right.
So, after about an hour and a half, I raised my hand and Phil went, oh, no. I said, okay, guys, look, here it is, everything that you've identified. It's not a big thing, You just got to, put together your bylaws, do this, do this, do this. And they said, great, when will you have it done?
Yeah.
And that's when Phil just went, see? I said, come back in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks later, they came back, and I was intending to be done, I just thought, okay, well, help some fellow citizens out here and get them going. So I walked them through their bylaws, and they voted on all these different things and said, okay, so you got to, elect a board and you got to elect officers. And so they did that and got almost all the way to the end. And then they turned around and they said, so you're going to be the president, right? And I went, no. They said, but you got to be the president. I said, no. And that went around for a couple times. And finally, all right, I'll do it. I said, I'll give you.
How long did that last, that 1 year?
I was the president for 15 months. And then I stayed on the board for a couple of years.
Okay.
And then
what did it do? Did it bring
Jazz Erie
folks to town, or
there were multiple components to it. First, it was paid membership, $25.
Okay.
And at the end of the first year, we had 1,000 paid members.
Okay, that's impressive.
We had concerts at least once a month.
Where at?
Oh, all over the place. Scully's Bar and Restaurant was one of the many places that we did. We started the Blues and Jazz Walk the first year.
Okay.
And that kept going for many, many, many years.
All right. Was the Blues and Jazz Festival already in?
It had just started.
We
were involved in
helping
supporting.
With that?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And John was on the board. John Vanko was on the board. And these guys, for whatever reason, decided not to incorporate. They just stayed under the umbrella of the insurance for events. Was covered, financial auditing was covered, and so on. There was an educational component. We involved all of the music teachers that we could, the band directors and stuff from all the schools in this entire region. They still have a youth concert every year.
Who does?
Jazz Erie.
So it's still an entity?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not realize that.
Yeah.
That's why I said, where did it go?
Right.
So it's still around.
I think it's sort of on maybe a third life.
Okay, all right.
And they have a big picnic coming up this month.
Interesting.
They have quite a few people involved with it, but they just did that youth concert where they had all kinds of young kids. We had a scholarship. We were $1,000 a year scholarship to a music student.
Good.
There was just a ton of different aspects. There was a group that got together every month just to listen to records and talk about them.
Okay.
Chuck Ventrello was really involved in that.
Sure, right.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's important, I think, because as we go into you getting back into music, my impression of you looking in from the outside was he's a jazz guy because you're playing with, Phil and those guys at Dickey's all the time, and you're playing with Jim Madden, and I think of jazz, you're playing at what's it called? Julio's? Or,
the non-jazz musicians
man.
think of me as a jazz musician. The jazz musicians think of me as absolutely not.
Great. Okay. All right. Yeah. And then I was surprised then when I mentioned some of those bands earlier, the Bootleggers Bible Club, with Matt Texter.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, how would you
That's
describe
fun.
that? No, that's fun for sure. But it's not jazz. It's folk and then same with
it's more bluegrass than anything.
Right.
I would say. Yeah, that was part of my history. But what happened was I started playing, and the folks that owned the Bel Air, wonderful people, and they had been my clients, my marketing clients for decades.
Sure, right.
And the manager at the time heard that I was starting to play again. And he called me up out of the blue and said, we haven't done music in quite a while, but we really want to. Would you do it for me? Take it over.
Kerry?
No, this gentleman who worked for Kerry.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Yeah.
And I said, okay, when? And he says, well, we want to start now. And it's like June. And I said,
this is in Maxie's.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I said, you don't want to start till September. And he said, why not? And I said, because you don't have an outdoor facility.
Yeah.
You're boxed inside that building.
Right.
And you don't want to try to compete against all the outdoor stuff. Make it September 1st. I'll be ready by then because I'm not ready now.
Yeah, right.
And then I just started calling all the people that I knew saying, hey, would you play with me?
Yeah.
And that opened it up. But what happened was we went from one night to 2 nights. And in order to be of value to the Bel Air, to bring them business, it was important that we brought a lot of different musicians and music styles.
Yeah.
And so I just started rotating people, inviting people to play. They would get paid, and if they could read simple charts, like a real book kind of thing. If they could read the chords, or the melody lines and stuff, then they would play with us. Otherwise, we'd play with them.
Got it.
So,
okay. Yeah.
I didn't care what kind of
Who
styles.
was we at this time? Who was the core? Dave?
Well, Phil
Dave
and
Blades,
me,
Phil.
and David came in fairly early. I mean, I wasn't proficient enough. I wasn't good enough to play with David or Phil.
Okay.
But they put up with me. I was learning on the job.
Yeah, right.
Very much.
Out of necessity, but obviously you had felt the need to get back into it. This is 2013, 40 years later. So
yeah, I was 65.
So you're okay.
And
perfect.
if anybody, ever thinks,
you're
I'm
too old to play. You're
Come
the
on.
perfect example.
You jump in wherever you want. One of the things I learned that was really fascinating was even though I hadn't played for 40 years, I came in at a much higher level than I left.
Why is
After I spent the first couple of months getting my fingers moving.
Got it.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Because during all that time, I had been listening to the music. I had been listening to so many different styles. So many different musicians.
Yeah.
Fell in love with Weather Report and all kinds of different people. But
Yeah.
But to me, one of the things that Phil and I do a lot is we spend so much time trying to understand how every different musician that we work with or we know listens to music. You're familiar with the concept of synesthesia? People who, when they hear a note of music, they see a color.
Oh yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a form of synesthesia.
Okay.
It's an interesting wiring of the brain, the synapses in the brain.
Okay.
And I know a handful of people who have color synesthesia for music.
Wow.
And I don't get jealous of other people usually, but that's one of the things
that
I
would be
wish that
cool.
I could.
For sure.
Right.
That would be very cool. Yeah.
But for me, I know that I hear music totally different than everybody else because there's 2 ways to approach music. One is if you're reading a chart, it doesn't matter if you're fast or slow.
Sure, right.
You're saying, okay, a G chord, a G, B, D. Okay, I think I understand that.
Right.
I play it on the keyboard or whatever. And to any aspiring musicians, I don't care what instrument you play or want to play, start with the keyboard, please, just for a little bit at times, because the visual of being able to see the white keys and the black keys makes all the difference in the world.
Right.
Anyway, so I learned a lot about how each individual musician hears and plays.
Yeah.
Because we're all different.
Yeah.
We have 2 more gigs with Matty and the Pickles, and then that band will be
Right. I
officially
knew that
shelved.
was wrapping up. All right. Well,
I'll get to play with you some year.
I don't know about that. It would be more me getting to play with you. That would be how it is.
No.
I appreciate you being on here. I'm honored to have you on here. They're great stories, and it's exactly what I thought it was going to be. I mean, that giant gap, I love that, and you're coming back. So you're an inspiration for sure to guys like me who I don't want to take a 40-year break. I can't do that, but
I hope you don't have to.
I hope not too. Yeah.
I'm a lucky guy. I'm lucky to have enough health to keep going. I'm lucky to have a wife who puts up with me constantly.
For sure. But the other thing is, I think we're lucky to live in this town right now because there are plenty of places to play. You play in a jazz band at the old Manicore. Granted, there's not a lot of places to play jazz, but there are plenty of other venues around. There are more popping up, so I think that's another thing that we're lucky about.
We need to really always appreciate the people that are For example, this Saturday I'm going to play either a solo.
Rathskellers, right? Or...
No, I'm going to be playing. We played Rathskellers this last week.
Oh, last week. Okay.
Yeah. We're playing. I'm playing at the Six Pack House of Beer.
There you go. For Alice.
Doing a solo. For Alice.
That's awesome.
Wonderful people.
Yeah. I mean, that's
and all
exactly
these folks
right.
they're out there. They're supporting live music, and we are super fortunate.
That's a really good example. Like Alistair George, obviously a business owner, a printer, but a giant, her and Dave have been giant music fans for years, and they open this place. They're like, let's have live music, so people that say there's nothing to do in Erie aren't looking hard enough because there's plenty of places to go.
Are there people still who say that?
I don't know if there are, but if they are, you're stupid. So,
okay.
All right. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, buddy.
Good deal. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Erie Music History Podcast. I want to say thanks to the JPT Foundation. They have been a financial supporter of the podcast since the beginning, and they also give us a free space to have our monthly music night on the first Tuesday of the month. It always features our great house band, the Fabulous Leftovers, as well as a lot of other local bands and musicians. But it's a lot of fun. First Tuesday of the month, totally free. Any donations go to the Second Harvest Food Bank. It is BYOB. There's a great pizza shop next door, Pasalinquas. Check that out, the first Tuesday of the month. Also, make sure that you check out Jack Stevenson's Two-Man Happy Hour podcast. Basically tells you where people are playing today, where and when, and you can check that out at the number 2manhappyhour.com. All right, that's all I got for you. Thanks again for listening.